I've already heard that some people are still at my age. Not to mention any names. It was very nice of Blue Cross to arrange that. And, you know, isn't it amazing? You walk around. Detroit has some of those fascinating architecture. I don't know, maybe you're not like me, but there's a little bit of a frustrated architect in me anyway. I love to look at blueprints, and I love it when architecture renderings come out of new buildings in Dayton, Ohio, University of Dayton, my alma mater, West Virginia. I just get totally into it. So then, like last night, when you're walking around, it's just like, oh my gosh. Of course, now, the Renaissance Center, I made the comment, to me, is definite proof that too many architects love too much pot in the session. You know, I mean, there are obviously people who came into the doors of this place in the 80s and are still trying to find their way out. So stop and talk to some of the folks that look a little frustrated. Right now they've forgotten that they're lost. They think they live in this. All right. What we want to talk about this morning is what I said we were going to talk about, and much of it is a recap of some things we talked about yesterday morning. And that's kind of deliberate, because what I hope we were able to do yesterday morning, and I'm sure Sue's got the camera there going, please quit moving around. What we wanted to do is kick off yesterday morning and then let you have those workshops and the opportunities to chat at lunch and do all those kinds of things to help reinforce, and then, you know, repeat it and kind of bring some of those points back this morning. I would encourage you this morning. Bill Kitchen is going to be handling part of this session. But, you know, if you want to stop midterm and ask a question or make a comment or say, I'm not sure I agree with that, or what do you mean by that, let's do it. So if we can make this a little interactive, it's going to be anyway, but even while I'm chatting, if you want to make it interactive, that would be great. I like to do that kind of thing. But I did tell you yesterday morning that we're going to talk about leadership skills no matter where you are in the chapter. Because it really doesn't matter if you're the chapter president or you're just taking on your first assignment. We all need to begin to hone our competencies and identify the attributes, what it takes to be a leader. And, as Time Magazine said a few years ago, the person of the year is you. The more time I work for NMA, the more I travel, the more time I spend with you and out in chapter land, the more convinced I am that everybody who belongs to an NMA chapter benefits. But the people who really get the most out of it are the folks who look. Those of you who, despite your busy schedules, who, despite family obligations, despite the fact that you're working 60, 70 hours a week, if not more, you still find the time to do this. And that means either you're off your meds, or it means you understand the importance of it, and that you're helping other people and you're keeping the thing organized really is an opportunity for you to grow personally and professionally. So, what do I think the challenges of chapter leadership are? Well, we say yesterday, leadership is about taking an organization from where it is to where you want it to be. But you have to know who's driving. Now, I don't have this on the screen. In addition to knowing who's driving, referring to yourself, each of you also need to know the other people on the team. Because your chapter does not run itself. We're going to talk about in a minute that you are not God. So it's important that as a chapter leader, you understand one of them. And I sat in on the treasurer's workshop yesterday with the Release was leading, and somebody was talking about how one of the best activities they just did in their chapter, they brought in someone to do, instead of just do a presentation, they did a brief overview of Myers-Briggs, personality indicators, and you know, you forget sometimes that maybe, like in my case, I did the Myers-Briggs thing more than probably 20 years ago. And you know, there were still people who could walk around. Priscilla, who used to be on our staff, was one of them. She would something would happen in our office, and she would say, well, that's because you're an ENDP or whatever the hell this initials. You know, there's some people who will go to their grave, their last breath will be, the doctor says, how do you feel? And they're lying there going, you know. But it's a great exercise. So my point is, even with your chapter officers, it's important to remember that you've got to employ all these magical skills of motivating and encouraging and supporting and making sure people have the tools that they need. You know, all of you in the driver's seat, some people have more experience driving than others. You know, some people are better drivers than others. You're always going to have an idiot on your team who wants to text and drive. You know? So you have to make sure that everybody who can get behind the wheel knows what they're doing, and that's kind of because, why? Because you are in the driver's seat. There are rules of the road in any chapter and in any organization. And if I'm going to take some truth, sir, and stand here before you, I can tell you I have seen conflict between people in an NMA chapter bring it back. So while my job is to always reinforce the positive, I don't run for the negative. And I know all of you have experienced this. Matter of, okay, we have some petty jealousies, we have some hurt feelings, we have some folks who maybe don't understand the big picture. Deal with it. Just deal with it. It's a microcosm of the bigger picture because you don't always love everybody else in the company either. You learn to work with each other, around each other, through each other, and sometimes not that you have to have all these kumbaya moments, but you do need to go, what's the greater good? Why? Because other people are depending on you. That's why you have to get past this stuff. A chapter leadership position really is an opportunity to teach others how to drive. So, looking inwardly, ask yourself some questions. Who are you as a leader? See, this is a really good opportunity. It's really hard to step back. I mean, how many times have you sat in a meeting and watched somebody shoot themselves in the foot? And you're sitting there going, God, they're clueless. They don't even know that they did it. And you just pull them aside and smack them up the head. You really do. So part of being a good leader is not only knowing who are you, but how do people perceive you? And whom do you aspire to be? All of us want to grow and expand and move up and be thought highly of and to be respected. So as a leader of the chapter, you know, kind of step back. It's okay to get a little self-serving. Kind of sit, you know, as somebody said at breakfast this morning, I think it was Jim Peter, he goes, man, I could do some big old daydreaming if my office was in this building looking out with just water. You know, so maybe you don't have this view. And I know some of you work in places where you don't know what the weather is till you leave at 6 in the evening. But no matter what, spend a little time going, how do I want to be perceived? And what do I want to accomplish? What do I want to achieve? And then you have to think through your own network. That is the beauty of having chapter officers, plural. There's always somebody who has a piece of information that you don't. There's always somebody who has a connection that you don't. Use those folks. Find out who they know and what they know. In Facila skills, it's called understanding and utilizing the collective knowledge in the room. That's the beauty of teamwork. I like to work collaboratively, and I realize not everybody does. But to me, I like to pick brains. And to me, it's fun to find out, well, what do you think? Or what would you do? Because there's always somebody that can look at it from a perspective different from yours. And a leader understands that. And then, of course, how well do you know your customers? Now, that kind of looks like a pat line. Okay, Steve threw that on me. I have to watch it from my position, and you have to watch it from yours. That is assuming that we know what floats other people's boats. It's very easy to get into the mode of, well, because I don't care for pickled beets, that nobody else needs to eat it. Not true. There are some fools who actually like this. So, in the chapter perspective, it's like, well, maybe this isn't my hobby. Maybe it's somebody else's. Maybe going on a plant tour doesn't excite me, but it excites someone else. Say when you're choosing professional development courses and workshops and programs, everyone is different, and you have to provide a broad range of opportunities. Go back to looking at you. Being an NMA chapter person, somebody said to me yesterday that one of the things they always remember is that they represent their company at meetings. And she made the comment to me, she goes, we're all different, but I'm old school. How I speak reflects my company. How I dress reflects my company. Other people may be comfortable getting really casual. I am not. I'm not saying that they shouldn't, but I have my own vision of who I am when I'm on the road representing my organization. So you have to model the ideals and understand the vision of your chapter for yourself and for everybody else. I think the next one's really important. Stay on course. But change course if you need to. I had a session yesterday afternoon with Dr. David Harris from Lower College up in Beaver Creek. We met with him about 4:15 yesterday downstairs working on a project. You know, and he's really big on why are we so afraid of risk? And I think many times, because we've all had a boss sometimes who, if you took risk and you didn't do well, you got summarily shot. But at the chapter level, dare to be different. Dare to do things that haven't been done before. And you know what? If it doesn't work out, usually the world doesn't end. But you try. And if you're not comfortable taking risks by yourself, get some help. There's safety in numbers. Yes, John.
You know, we notice that we gather, our friends are much like us, but sometimes that disruptive influence can be such an asset if you can only tolerate it, right? You need to have patience, and you have to ask for opinions. And sometimes they're there, you know, but you have to deal with it. But different opinions, you know, ask for different viewpoints. We don't usually do that. We don't like conflict, and we don't have to have conflict.
You've been talking to Sue. And Sue will be the first one to tell you I don't personally deal well with conflict. I love differing opinions, but if you get in my face, I don't care. You know, I would expect you to be respectful, not of me, but of the situation. And I have had to learn that it's okay, you know, the person that kind of wants to bang a shoe on the table, or the lady who kind of wants to pull my hair. Sometimes that's okay, and that's part of growing, and that's part of being a leader. And it's not only accepting different viewpoints, it's realizing that you're not always right. So you are right, and for some of you, your personalities, your background, maybe even your families, you're used to conflict. I have a really good friend, Louisa, who's Italian, and she goes, I remember the first time I met some of her family, I was like, she goes, that's it, we just yell at each other. She goes, that's who we are. She said, if we didn't yell at each other, we wouldn't be able to communicate. Of course, I grew up in a family, we didn't say anything inappropriate. You just expected to mind your manners, quiet, and children to be seen and not heard. And I was an only child, and I was damn well not to be heard. My parents were going to win. So it is part of understanding that we were all brought up differently, and that what might offend me didn't bother the person sitting next to me at all. That's part of developing your skill as a leader where the chapter can help. So thank you, John. And it is important to ask, notice that's in caps, for those different viewpoints. And then the other hard part is to accept criticism graciously. Now there again, it's a personal thing, and it may depend on who you are and your upbringing and stuff. I can accept criticism, but could you please kind of give it to me nicely? And there again, it's just a personal thing, the way I was brought up. I don't deliberately offend. That doesn't mean I haven't. Because we all screw up and say something we don't mean to say, or especially with email, where it has no tone, no voice, or anything else. You screw up. But there are folks who are, I have very good friends for whom laying it out there is to them an asset. There are plenty of people like that. That's not how I am. So part of being a chapter leader and working with others is the whole matter. It's Rick's things. It's the understanding that how you and I take in information is not how somebody else does it. So it's a truly small micro unit of the bigger company you work for that can allow you to grow as a person by kind of checking signals with yourself. Then you've got to accept full responsibility for everything. Know where you're going. Yes.
One of the things I had to learn was, even though you're taking criticism constructively, it's just, you don't take it personally. A lot of times you take it personally.
So here, the importance is to learn to take criticism constructively, but not personally.
And that's hard. A lot of people still, they still take it personally.
Take it personally. And why is that? Yeah.
Because we own stuff.
Because we own stuff. Yeah. Because we can. And if you've really given your all to something, and you've busted your, and you've spent a lot of time and a lot of worry, and you have a lot of sweat equity into something, it's not fun to be criticized. So we have to learn to accept it, but let me also suggest we have to learn how to give it. You and I have a line I kind of use in a presentation that I do sometimes, and I saw it in the paper the other day. It's like resurfaced, where this individual said, remember when some of us of a certain age were growing up and entered the workforce, we were told to leave our personal problems alone. And I've used this line 1,000 times, I'm like, it's back. Because you know anyone who does that? Not anyone. Not especially when you can communicate with the proper people 24/7. So you and I as leaders have to understand who among us is dealing with things. And some of you heard me say when I spoke in your chapters, we had a young fellow in our office many years ago. Notice I said had. Who said to me one time, why do you go in the curriculum? I said, to get coffee. He goes, well, I know, but he said, you'll sit down and chit-chat, and he goes, I just don't want to know that stuff. And that's when I knew he wasn't long for our work. Because, I don't know how you are, but I don't want to know people's stuff. But I certainly want to know if they're carrying baggage that's holding them back, or slowing them down, or weighing them down. I joke sometimes, but it's true. I say, I want to know if someone's teenage son spent Friday night in a clink. And I want to know if someone's mother-in-law from hell just moved in. And I want to know if someone's spouse, significant other, just got a really rotten diagnosis. Because people, you expect them to be present every day. But sometimes people's minds aren't totally on the job. And we have to know why. I don't want to ask Terry to work overtime if he has a situation at home the past couple of days that he needs to go home and attend to. So we just have to be aware of what baggage other people have. Road ahead, even when you think you know where you're going, we've all rounded the bend and been surprised. So a good leader says, well, I will deal with that. I can handle surprises. We'll adjust course. And the best way to understand that is if you just can see the big picture. If you can be at the gas station and you can look out and you can go, okay, you can see where we're going. Everything's going to be fine. Everything's down there and it's okay. That's what you do. So, back to a question we looked at a minute ago, and he's putting a little bit of a plan on it. Who are your customers?
Your members.
Your members. Who else?
Your members that you don't have yet.
Your members that you're trying to snare, right? Members you don't have yet.
And
Who else?
the company.
Your company. Or community.
Person you report to.
Person to whom you report. Aha. Good point, Ron.
I think an easier question is who isn't your customer?
Okay. Why did you ask that, Sam?
Well, because basically everyone around you should be treated like a customer, in a way.
recognizing in your company or your work environment, most people know who the NMA folks are. So you carry that aura with you, and people are aware that you represent NMA or you work for that leadership association. You have something to do with that. So you are out there representing the chapter probably more frequently than you know. And sometimes people will make a buying decision. I made a statement to someone years ago that was a little risky. I'll risk it again. When I said, people want to be associated, it's the Peter Drucker thing. People want to be associated with folks who they think are going somewhere and who are movers and shakers. And if your chapter is dweeb hell or old people hell or not viewed as the place to be, and trust me, I can be a dweeb, but I'm not exactly 20 anymore, so I'm making fun of myself here. You need to remember that how you perceived that, each of you individually and everybody collectively. So if you're asking who your customers are you sure what they want from you? You know, one of you mentioned to me yesterday afternoon that you really were getting ready to go home and going to do a really critical self-analysis and make the comment that the focus was going to be on can people identify what they want from their chapter. I think that's great. You know, one of the things you'll find sometimes is, though, when you ask that question, people aren't sure. And that always surprises me, even when, we have an executive advisory group to NMA, and we convene that group every 2 or 3 years. I don't convene them just to convene them because they're busy people. So you got to have a really legitimate reason to be tapping the brains. And sometimes even people at the executive level with questions like that, and they're like, well, geez, I don't know. That's why surveys are dangerous. One of the things I hate is if we're trying to start a new NMA chapter and someone says, well, you know what, this sounds really good. I'll do a survey and see if it would be of interest to anyone. Well, that's like asking me, giving me a survey and want to know my opinion on Mandarin Chinese. I can't speak it, I can't read it, I don't know anything about it, I know it's out there. You gotta tell me something, you gotta give me something. So surveys, not that you have to put a survey, you don't want to influence it by the way you ask the question. But you need to know what you're doing. What are you going for? And can people answer questions from a position of knowledge versus no knowledge? Big difference when it comes to survey. Yeah, Mark.
I keep hearing about where we're going, and I've thought about this. And I've talked to people about this too, about mission statements and vision statements. The vision statement tells you what you see in the future. The mission tells you how you're going to get there. Okay. So if you, even sometimes people ask, why do we have objectives? Because that tells you strategically how you're going to get to those places. So if you got a vision, this is the big picture. This is the mission, how I'm going to get there. And you align what you're trying to do underneath that, you'll always be in the right direction. You may zig and zag, but you're still going to, as long as you get to that point, you may never reach the vision, but the mission, but you still know where you're trying to go to. You see what I'm saying? So as far as not knowing where to go, if I align, just like we were talking about the R1s yesterday, I see these are some of the things that we need to hit. So that kind of gives me a direction where I need to go. So I just focus on those things and things surrounding it to keep building from it. So to me, it's not that different.
Well, and there's a piece to add to that. That was an excellent move. And I see it with the college kids whom I advise. I used to have them at the end of a school year, before finals, had to have all the new officers for next year, maybe out to my home for brunch. And I would cart home the big post-it boards and everything from work and the easels and take the kids through, trying to show them what strategic planning is and how to set those objectives. And I quit doing that to make a point. Because they went through the exercise and then they never used them again. I could not get 20-somethings to to understand that every time their executive officer team met, they need to have those goals and objectives in front of them. Because they weren't going back to check. This is what we say we want to do. And then suddenly you get caught up in managing, not leading. Leading says, checking back with everything you say you want to do and are going to do, are you doing it? And as you say, you can zig and zag and change how you're going to get there. But don't get caught up in just moving the organization down the path. Make sure you're headed for that new direction that you said you were going to do at the beginning of your term.
Steve?
Yeah.
I think Ron would have definitely benefited last year when we had the speaker that talked about their own vision statement. And I think it's important for everyone to have their own vision statement. Actually, after hearing that, I went out and actually made my own vision statement. I think it's that we're trying to guide my actions and just be more cognizant of what do I stand for, my brand, and just, basically having that vision that I can look at and say, this is what I stand for and what I'm trying to do with myself and my career.
And when and where did you develop it? Were you on a plane? Were you have a sleepless night?
At the actual event. I forgot the speaker's name. If anybody can remember, I think he had a good book also that went with it. But at that actual event, because he said develop 3 words, basically. So I just developed my own 3-word mission statement. Vision statement.
All right.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks, Flores. Anybody else? All right.
Silverstein, that was his name.
Oh,
that's
Sam.
right. Sam Silverstein, that's
okay.
right.
Yeah, he was our keynote speaker first afternoon.
Yeah.
Okay. Ben, have you stayed in touch with him? He's a great guy.
Yes.
Some of you have. You have. Okay. So the challenges are, what do they want from you? What do they want from the chapter? How are you going to get people what they want? That's where your network comes in. Finding the folks that can do things. One of the things you have to learn as a leader is there are so many people who will help you. All you have to do is ask. I watch another group to which I belong. They try to lead through email, which works my last time. What I mean is, they'll say, we need volunteers for such and such. Well, a couple people will respond that way. But mostly the way to get someone to help is to say, oh, can you help us next weekend or the weekend after next, whatever. Very few people will turn you down personally. But it's really easy to let that email just fly on by because somebody else will do it. So it's that personal touch. To me, email in a chapter is great for cross-checking and for reminders and to just kind of double-check that something got done. But don't use it to lead. Use it to manage. Big difference. And lastly, are you fully anticipating other challenges? What I mean by that is, if you're plugged in to the grapevine, or you just are aware of everything going on, if you're a chapter leader, are you able to look down the road and go, no, there's a rumor that there's going to be another layoff. Or Med Center 1, there's a rumor that we're going to be sold. Or there's a rumor that something's going on in the community. Anticipate it and deal with it, and plan for it and make it part of your operation. So, what I'm going to do at this point is kind of let your 2011 chairman of the board, Bill Kitchen, come up and kind of do more of this discussion. So, thanks.
I'm very partial to group dynamics. I love working with groups. And it goes back to the 90s. That shows how young I am. And back in the 90s, some of you probably remember Hazel O'Leary, Secretary of Energy. She had a push on total quality and things of that type. I ended up in Washington, D.C. for about 2 years, leading problem solving, facilitating sessions on establishing strategic planning, and so forth. In those group dynamics, and I'm going back to what is a leader, when you read books on leadership, you see words like a leader should be consistent. You also see a leader should be dynamic. Well, wait a minute. How can that be? Well, the best example is when I worked with Hazel O'Leary and her assistant secretaries, her belief was when you went into a problem-solving group, you weren't an assistant secretary. You left your head at the door, everybody was equal. Well, I also facilitated a session on beginning of the problem solving on the Exxon Valdez incident with the U.S. Coast Guard. They don't leave their hats at the door. Okay, there's a chain of command. So the dynamic that they're talking about in leadership is really in approach. You must have variation of approach depending on what the situation is. But you're always consistent in your values, your principles, your beliefs. You don't vary from those. If people see that consistency on where you're at, what you believe, you know, you're going to be highly respected as a leader. But if they also see that you can adjust yourself in different group situations, that's going to increase that respect and belief in you. Yes?
I just want to say something about what you said, because I feel like you were speaking to me when you said that, but here's some problems that I have, maybe you can help me with. Because I fully buy into what you were saying, but that takes time. A lot of times, the managers don't want to give you that time. They want you to perform right now.
Right.
So, how do you deal with that challenge?
Are you the manager or are you the
Well, in my specific situation, I'm like a project manager, but I really feel like one of my strengths is building relationships with people. So I tend to get a lot of people on my teams that nobody else wants. Because I have a lot of patience with people and that sort of thing. But it takes time to build those relationships, to get those people that nobody else wants to deal with to do what you need them to do. But, you know, the perception, or at least my feeling is I'm perceived as somebody that takes too long to get something.
There's a couple of good books out there. They're kind of old, but I love them. In fact, I refer to them every now and then. One is a simple one, the 1 Minute Manager. But there's another one out there by Ken Blanchard, talks about his, I'll never forget his diagram. The forming, norming, storming, and performing. Those are the 4 segments that you go through. I've been able to go through those segments in a meeting, one-on-one meeting, in less than a half hour. I've also been slowed in going through those in a year, you know, with an organization. The dynamics of the situation sometimes allows you to go, if you've got a good relationship, from forming all the way to performing very quickly. And that's as a manager to a worker. Okay, where you have a very short period of time. As Stephen Covey would say, you start with the end in mind. So my meeting with you is starting with what are my expectations at the end? And then coming back, this is the performing part. And that's to say, how are we going to get there from here? Notice I didn't say, how are you going to get there from here? Okay, and what you're doing is then establishing that relationship. Okay, the one-on-one relationship now becomes 1 + 1 = 3. You know, the synergy thing. And that's where you're starting to build trust. So in using that diagram, the performance part is always starting, what are the expectations, and then coming back and then working through. On a small group level, it's a lot more difficult and it takes, you know, a little bit more time. But I like what you just brought up because it brings in where I was going to go with all this. I noticed with this group of people that we have on the East LDC that you're very subdued and quiet and you don't talk very much at the meetings. kind of surprising. Well, like my treasury session, who was in the treasury session? You guys hardly said anything. Her chin dropped on the table. We had a very interactive session. Now, my approach on that session was, where was I positioned in that session, Adrian?
Physically,
Yeah,
sitting on the table.
sitting right there? Okay. Where am I now? I'm standing up, okay? Now, my expectation was that I didn't know you, okay? I don't know you guys from Adam, but treasurers, I go in there, my expectation of treasurers is, bean counting, okay? Not a high expectation of group dynamics, you know, a lot of interaction and stuff like that. Because usually people that work in the treasury or finance do what? It's one-on-one, right? Sitting down with the papers and going over numbers and saying this. So my approach to that meeting, you know, you gotta think, how am I going to present this stuff? Is to just sit down with them. Okay, make them feel comfortable, have the screen to the back of me, they can look at the screen or look at me, whatever. But get the focus away from me into the data that I'm talking about. That's the dynamics I'm talking about. Other sessions, for example, the Coast Guard, it was a small U-shaped area, admirals, you know, you're shaking his head. He knows what I'm talking about. Very strong-willed people and so forth. I have to establish myself as a strong-willed person, as a leader with that group. So, I go in with a suit on, I'm standing up straight, holding my gun and talking directly, having eye contact with each one as they speak, and saying exactly what we're going to do. This is the process that we're going to go through over the next 4 hours, whatever. That's what they expect. So, the point I'm making in all this is that you need to understand, you mentioned the customer. You also need to understand your associates that you're working with in your chapter, with the one thing in mind. NMA, whether it's a chapter or a headquarters, is a 501c6 organization. What does that mean?
Non-profit.
Well, it's something where you can get profit from.
It's not for profit.
It's a not-for-profit, but isn't there, it's a difference between a 501c3 and a 501c6.
Well, 501c6 is the same as far as, you're not there to make profit, it's voluntary.
Mhm.
Okay?
Oh, okay.
It's a
So people
voluntary.
can get paid, that's what it is.
Right.
That's right, that's right.
It's a non-political, voluntary organization. The key word there, voluntary. Now, with the exception of me up here, and maybe John, maybe someone else in the room, I don't have a regular job. I'm retired. You guys all have regular jobs. And the people that are in your chapter have regular jobs. What's one of the biggest challenges that you run into?
Family.
Family, okay. Keep going. What's priorities?
Time.
Time. Time. It's hard to get people to have the time to help you out, right? To do the things you need to do to expand somebody said expand the chapter or whatever. It's really difficult. So you need to have empathy for that situation. As Steve was trying to bring out, what's the situation that you're talking about between two people and with your group? That's a pretty big challenge, okay, organizationally, and how you hit it personally. Steve mentioned if a person has a lot going on at home. I've managed up to, I had 270 people at one time. You'd like to be that close to everybody, and you'd like to work that way, real life, you know, and and be able to be that personal. That is a huge challenge to do that, when you have that many people and that many things to get done. It's, even if you're working in a group of two, and you know the other person is going through a divorce or something, some real tough personal issues, but the only way you can meet that deadline, we gotta work this weekend, or whatever. Well, what's it come back to? It comes back to approach. All right? That's what I'm getting to, the dynamics of approach, how you approach that situation. You can still get it done. You can still work that weekend without being a pain in the gluteus maximus. Okay? You just handle it differently. The dynamics of leadership. It's adjusting to what the situation is. Now, up on the screen, you've got this, I think there's two successive ones, one for organization and one for personal. What are the challenges? I want, let's see, first two rows together, next two rows together, and then the back row, you just turn around and talk to the window. No, I mean, you'll be getting together like so. And with this table, let's split it right down the middle of this table. Okay, you'll be to that side, and then you'll be to that side, kind of grouped together and talking back and forth. But what I'd like you to do is talk about these two things. Spend about the next 10 minutes here as to what are your biggest personal and your biggest organizational challenges that you're going to have when you go back. Now, by organizational challenges, we're talking NMA type stuff. But you can't talk about NMA type stuff without thinking about the rest of the stuff, right? About your work and so forth, how that interferes with what you're trying to achieve. So, what I'd like you to do is turn around or whatever, talk with amongst yourselves, and then I'm going to ask somebody, or that group, have one person that will talk to the organizational, and one person that will talk to the personal challenges. Cover both of them. Okay? Let's go.
I'm Rochelle. I'm Melanie. Three of us work at restaurant and make and trying to do really hard.
I guess the best thing to do is probably just list them out. Brainstorm what are your personal challenges. What are we